If you've been considering trying ayahuasca, then you've come to the right video because today's video, I'm going to share an ayahuasca experience I had that really taught me so much about death and grieving. My name is Crystal Turner. I support the translation of being in this physical life to becoming whole, mind, body, and spirit through ancient wisdom, ancient practices and principles, and holistic living. So let's just get right into it. So ayahuasca is a plant. It's a plant medicine. It's psychoactive, meaning that it does impact your consciousness in the process of utilizing ayahuasca. And there are many people, you could look on YouTube and find many people who are using Mama Aya, which many people call it Mama Aya. A lot of people have utilized ayahuasca for healing and for transformation, to become out of places where they are really stuck. I work in psychiatry, and even in psychiatry spaces these days, they're talking more about what they call psychedelics. I don't like using that word, but plant medicine that is psychoactive, like psilocybin and ayahuasca. And I say that to say that there is more credit being given to these areas that are being considered and how they can be used, because for many people, they've utilized these substances, ayahuasca and psilocybin, but ayahuasca, because that's what I'm talking about today, in ways of helping with depression and anxiety. Many people have stated that it has completely transformed their trauma, dealing with OCD, so many different things that people have talked about how ayahuasca has been very helpful. So ayahuasca is a plant. And it often is utilized. It's the only way that it's utilized. It's not legal in the United States. The way that it's utilized is to, go to places where it is and to utilize someone who is skilled and knows this plant. People who are connected to the plant, utilizing shamans who can help go through the process of the ayahuasca experience and the ceremony that you would do when you're utilizing ayahuasca. So let me talk about why I chose to utilize ayahuasca. First of all, many people will say that ayahuasca calls you. You don't find it, it finds you. And it is very much what I found to be true. I was listening to, well, I don't even know what I'm saying. I wasn't listening to anything. I had a brother who, at the age of 49, had gotten diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, stage 4 lung cancer at the age of 49, which really shocked our entire family. And in the process of him getting treatment, his treatment, from the time that he was diagnosed at the age of 49, he passed away at the age of 51, not even from the cancer. It came from the side effects of the treatment. And he passed away in December of 2023. And it was after that on my timeline on YouTube, ayahuasca just started popping up. And so I started watching the videos, and it really intrigues me. And the main reason it intrigues me, it's because I had listened to a video of Black people who utilize ayahuasca, who talks about its benefit in connecting with loved ones, connecting with ancestors. And that was obviously big on my heart at that moment after losing my brother and dealing with that grieving process. So I studied and learned more and researched more about ayahuasca for a good year. So my brother passed at the end of, did I say 20? He actually passed at the end of 2022. And so at the end of 2023, for my birthday, I went and I attended an ayahuasca retreat. And my goal and my purpose for attending was to connect with my brother and also to connect with my father, who had passed back in 2006. oftentimes when going into these experiences, from what I had learned at that point, that it was important to have intention on what it was that you were searching to deal with in that process. And so one of the main things was being able to connect with my brother and my father, and also deal with a lot of my own trauma and a lot of my own insecurities that I was really dealing with at that time. And so I went to a place in Mexico where I took part in. It was one ceremony that was being done for the time that I was at this retreat, because I had attended a retreat. And when I attended the retreat, one of the things that they did at this retreat was you had the option of trying something called rape, which was a tobacco that goes up your nose. They blow it up your nose, and the purpose is to clear the energy in the space, clear your energy, and it's more like for protection. And so that was the first initial part of the ceremony. Let me just say that before we got to the actual ceremony, even prepping for the actual experience, 2 weeks before, it was suggested to have a lighter diet, like a diet that didn't have a lot of processed foods or didn't have any processed foods and didn't have any meat or dairy, any of those things. It was more clean eating and lighter eating, because it was thought to help with the experience more. And so when I arrived at the retreat center, the first few days we were eating and doing other practices before we actually had the ceremony. So I think on the third day I was there, then the ceremony occurred. And it was it was a dome, I guess, outside. There was a good amount of women, because this retreat was for women. And so a lot of really beautiful women, I'll say. In all honesty, women from all over the world. And they were the women who were facilitating were really the kindest people I could have met. It was really felt very safe. And so at the point that it was time for me to take the ayahuasca, I took the ayahuasca, I drank it. It was a pretty bitter type of taste to the ayahuasca, but it was a drink. So you were to drink it and then, go back to your mat and, just try to lay and relax, which is what I did. And, the experience itself was very much so intense. It was some parts I don't even remember because it was that intense, but there's a lot that I did remember. And it started out really bringing up, it seemed like it went back to one of my grandmother of which I never met. My father and my paternal grandmother passed away when my dad was little. But I remember like seeing a vision of her and like a vision of my dad and having this energy of pain. And I'm gathering that it was their pain that I was feeling. Then seeing a glimpse of my brother and his pain. And it felt like his pain was coming from that lineage. It felt like there was just this immense pain that was there. And that was difficult. Feeling that was difficult. And then I started seeing it transmuted to these ideas of my children suffering or having like emotional pain, which was very hard for me as a mom. I didn't quite understand that, and I'm still processing that part. But I think I've gotten a good amount of understanding, which I'll share before I'm done. Because this is 2025, the end of 2025. So it's taken me this amount of time to really process all of that experience. So yeah. So that's how the experience started out. And there were some beautiful moments too. There were definitely some beautiful moments, but it started out feeling this emotion, just feeling that pain. And at some point during the experience, I remember seeing this blue spear of light there were two spears of blue light. And it was just a knowing within me that this was my brother and my father. So they didn't look obviously like, they didn't even come in the form of human form, but it was in the form of blue light spears. But I knew that it was them. And there were no voices talking, but this was all in consciousness. This was all in my consciousness. And from that, I recall them saying to me, or communicating to me, however we want to say this, they were communicating to me saying that not to grieve and not to be sad about the pain that they experienced in this life, because that was one of the very hard parts for me, is that both my dad and my brother had difficulties, and my brother had a past with some substance use, even though he overcame the substance use before he transitioned. But I really always had a very sad connection to that and what that must have been like for him, and the pain and the unhappiness he must have had. So oftentimes I thought about that, and with my dad, just the hardships that he dealt with growing up. And so the message that I received from them is not to mourn about the pain that they had in this life, because their soul got from this life what it was that they needed to get to develop. The more important thing was the soul development more than the human experience. And so it was important for them to tell me not to mourn that experience that they had in this life, because it helped their soul to develop. And now they had the lesson. And so there was nothing, they were better because of it. And then they commenced to communicate with me that as I continue to live this life, I'll always be connected with them as long as I'm moving in alignment, moving from spirit and in alignment and from a place of love. That when I'm moving like that, then they will be moving in sync with me and completely connected with me. And I cannot even express how beautiful the message was, and how much I got it, and how much it helps me to deal with how I experienced their transition, how I was now connecting and understanding it and getting that peace. Like, there is no peace I could have gotten in my day-to-day life, in this like 3D experience. I couldn't, there's no way I would have gotten that level of comfort that I got to consciously connect with them and get that information. And so that was so beautiful. That was one of the major experiences I had from that ayahuasca experience. There were parts of the ayahuasca experience that I don't remember. I would have to go back and look at my notes, but this was the big part that really helps me in relationship to grief and death. And to be truthful, after the ayahuasca experience, the next day, the facilitator or the shaman who I was there with, she came to the room with me and the other ladies who were also there, and we were to do the rape again if we chose to, and I did choose to do the rape. And so it's a pretty intense feeling to have this rape blowing up your nose. But when she did the first one, I remember it was almost like core emotions that I had, or deep-rooted beliefs that I had, just came out, and it was the thought that no one loved me. And I remember crying about it, because it was no way to like put up any facade or put on a face. It was just like my raw emotions just came out, my deep-rooted emotions, this idea that I wasn't loved or no one loved me. And in my mind, I know that that's not true. But in that moment, I think I moved through life like that was true. And so that came up. And then the second rape that she put up my other nostril, let me just say this. The idea of no one loving me, I think it really had a strong connection to my relationship with my dad, because there was a lot of tumultuousness, if tumultuousness is a word, with my relationship with him growing up. And I think there's a big impact as a girl with her father, and how that relationship happens and then how that impacts you. And so I think that's where a lot of that thought came from, that no one loved me. And so then when she did the second drape up my nose, it was like in this moment, it was like I knew that he was everywhere and that he was communicating. It's so deep because now that I'm remembering it, it was like, it's not like there was this conversation I had with him. It was just like this knowing that came all explained to me at once. And it was that he had so much pain that he had dealt with. He didn't know how to even love me the way I deserved to be loved. He didn't even know how to express love to me the way that he really did love me, because of his own pain. But in that moment, he was letting me know that he is everywhere. He was, and the level of how I felt him all around me was so intense. I don't know how to even express this verbally, but it was this knowing that he is everywhere. And I'm so grateful that I'm doing this video because I'm remembering that experience, but that he was everywhere, that now that he's not in a body, he is everywhere for me, just everywhere. There is no encapsulation of this physical body that I'm in, but that my soul, my spirit is encapsulated. So it was such a strong message, and it was really confirming and beautiful. It erased any pain that I had with him in this life, to know this part of him, this deep love that was coming from him, that was being communicated and radiated to me. So that's what I can tell you about my experience at the retreat. But now, if you don't know, when it comes to ayahuasca, the main part of ayahuasca is going to happen when you go home. I'll be honest, I also went into ayahuasca thinking that it would, when I talk about my insecurities that I dealt with, that it would just help erase it right away. Like I would go to the ayahuasca retreat and come home without any of the pain. And I studied the ayahuasca experiences of other people, and studied ayahuasca within and of itself for a year, like I said, before I had gone. So I knew that I had heard people say that ayahuasca isn't going to just like change everything, like this part that you have to do. But deep down, I was hoping and wishing that it was just gonna erase some things just completely at once. And everyone's experience is different. There are people who that is their experience, but I do know that there's a large part of this healing process that happens when you go home. And I'll be honest, the first 6 months after the ayahuasca, I think was torturous for me, because there was something in me that just didn't want to connect with people, particularly people who weren't really right for my life. And so I was spending a lot of time in solitude, a lot of time quiet. Like I had a friend who I knew that I was contemplating if this friendship was right, if it was what I should have been part of anymore. And so I didn't respond right away, though. It was a lot of inner reflection, just taking my time and not feeling like I had to rush and reach out, and that relationship did end. It did end. And but other relationships, like I dealt with a lot of codependence in relationships, even with people who I love, who I know are there for me. It was like this time of being completely to myself. And I say that the ayahuasca and that experience after coming home for that period of time was very torturous, because it was me needing to be by myself, to fall in love with myself, to really appreciate who I am. I had to stop running to other people in different ways and leaning on them. That was hard for me. But it also taught me about this continuation of death and grief and, letting go. Because in that period of time after my brother had passed, I had also gotten divorced that was the other thing that happened before I had gone to the retreat. I had recently separated from who is now my ex-husband. And so this was also a time of, you know, that, dealing with that death, even though it wasn't literal, it was a death of a relationship, or the nature of how a relationship was, a marriage. I had a dog who passed away, which was very difficult within that year. And the dog it was huge because he represented a period of my life. We had this dog since my son was in kindergarten, and my son was a senior at this point, or going into his senior year. So, it was also symbolic of like this era that you've been in, raising my children, my son going off to college. It was the death of a era of motherhood in the way that I was doing it. A time that I felt was very purposeful. And now that that was leaving, it's like, well, who am I? So I had all these different deaths happening in my life. And the dog just took the cake because he was after everything. When he passed away, I'm like, okay, spirit is letting me know that this era of my life is closing. And it was difficult because that was a very important era of life for me. But it was an era of life where I gave myself to everyone else and didn't consider myself. And now here I am redefining, reimagining this next era of life. And it was very hard. It was very hard to learn how to be with myself, how to love myself, how to let people and things go when I didn't see the next thing that would be coming. It was really hard. Some unhealthy relationships, the way that they were, I had to stop behaving in some relationships the way that I had been. But it's been so rewarding. It really speaks to how sometimes the biggest work isn't going to be super fast. It's a process. And I can look at the process now and really see how different things are in my life, how different I am now. Much less anxious, much more reflective and trusting of spirit, and moving from that, and so much more tapped into dreams. I'm prophetic dreams. I have so many of those now, so much more synchronicity than even before. Um, definitely, definitely a life that has changed. And sometimes I do still have those moments of feeling um, some grief about the things that used to be, but it's not, it's part of the human experience, but I have much more of the wonder and the giddiness for life than ever before. Much more confident, just a growth that I know I would not have had I not allowed myself to experience ayahuasca, and it helped loosen up some of the energy in me. That's how I like to look at it. Like, it helped loosen up some things that I felt rooted to and deeply connected to, so that I can release those things. So I had to still do my work, but it's been a beautiful process. And I've become a much more adventurous person since then as well. I do want to experience ayahuasca again, but I knew that I didn't want to do it from a place of running from my pain to just have another experience. So I've really been sitting in this. I was actually going to do ayahuasca this year, but the woman who I want to use spring Washam with Lotus Vine journeys, I hope it's okay that I'm saying that on here, that I wanted to, but the timing just hasn't been right yet. And I'm trusting spirit to not try to force things to happen and not try and rush things to happen. I'm going to take my time because I want to meet her and work through with her. And she is having a retreat later in the year. And ironically, when that retreat is happening is when I'm going to be going away on a trip for my birthday. So, again, I'm not going to force a thing and let me know that this isn't the time yet. And when the time is right, it will come and everything will work smoothly. So that's what I want to share with you in relationship to ayahuasca. If you're thinking of doing it, then, I'm sending good energy to you in terms of its benefit in helping you with the growth that you're looking for. Please like this video if it was helpful and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in my next video. Have a good one. Bye.